What's up, people? Welcome back to Truckerlogic. My name's Rob, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about the decline of the Western world, the decline of Western societies, why it's happening, and what we need to do to get it straightened out. Now, if you're like me, you sometimes feel like you're in a permanent acid trip, and it's not a really great one. I mean, it is funny at times. It is funny, I'll give it that. But the consequences and the hangover are pretty bad, I have to say. Pretty bad. And I think we all notice it, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. I mean, I think everybody sees that in Western societies all over the world, whether it's Europe where I live, or the United States or Canada, the Western world is basically imploding from within. It's being completely destroyed. Society is being completely turned upside down. And look, if you're one of those people that don't think so, and you think that everything's going hunky-dory and great, then I've got a little reality checklist for you. Take a look.
You fight against our rights. You say we all lead lives you can't respect. But you're just frightened. You think that we'll corrupt your kids if our agenda goes unchecked. Funny, just this once, you're correct. We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit, quietly and subtly, and you will barely notice it. We'll convert your children. Someone's gotta teach them not to hate. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children.
Wow. That was probably the most creepy shit I've ever seen. If you don't think that's creepy, then something's wrong with you. And only in the West, only in the countries in the West would something like this be accepted and tolerated. You know? In countries, in Eastern countries, countries outside the West, these motherfuckers would have to be afraid to walk on the street. Think about that, people. Am I advocating these people should get hurt? No. No. Because it's not even their fault. Because this is what you get. This is what you get when governments try to force tolerance down onto the people. You know? That's what you get. You get people that know they're protected, And then they take advantage of that protection and flaunt this ridiculous, disgusting shit in everybody else's faces. It's pretty sick, people. These people are sick in the fucking head. And anybody who protects them, anybody who supports them, and anybody who thinks this is okay, well, you're on team grooming pedophile, not team sanity or reality. That's just the way it is, people. Well, that didn't look good, does it? That's pretty depressing and pretty distressing. I think that if you would have given this list to somebody 5 or 10 years ago and told them that this was going to be the state of the Western world in 2023, they would have thought you were a conspiracy theorist. You know, but things have changed so much over the years that now pretty much anything is possible. And I watch a lot of alternative media. A lot of people are doing a lot of good things, but a lot of, especially on the right, a lot of podcasts, talk shows, radio shows, they're all dedicated to these kind of issues and discussing these issues and trying to figure out the way out. And most of the solutions that they come up with tend to point in a political direction, which means that basically the idea is we vote the right people in, we get the right people in there, and then things will change for the better. Which, you know, I think that's part of it. I do think that's part of it. I think that the left has become extremely more radical all over the West, and left-wing radical politics have been running the show for way too long, and it's starting to become like a tyranny. And I think that, yes, getting right-wing politicians in there, getting populists in there, and moving away from this socialist, collectivist push that's going on right now will do something positive. I do believe that. But it's not a long-term solution because it's also not the root of the problem. You see, the root of the problem is that Western citizens are no longer using logic and critical thinking to make decisions or to navigate their way through life. You know, since the beginning of humanity, humans have had the ability to use logic and critical thinking. And they've had to use those traits to be able to navigate their way through a treacherous and unforgiving world, to make decisions, to come up with solutions. They've needed logic and critical thinking to get us there. We wouldn't have any of the technology we have today. We wouldn't have any of the medical advancements we have today. You know, we would be living in, you know, the 18th century still, if it wasn't for logic and critical thinking. It's like a magical gift that human beings have. And the collective Western citizens have decided it's no longer necessary. And what you get then is you get decisions based on emotions only. You get decisions based on how everybody feels. And the problem is you cannot run a society like that. It is very dangerous for a democracy, even the semblance of democracy we have today. And so if you don't get that problem fixed, then electing different politicians is only going to be a temporary solution. We're just going to be in the same type of situation again years later. So, you know, we call things like the circle of life, that things come back around all the time. That's true. And these situations come back around all the time as well. And that's because the fundamental problems aren't being fixed. The fundamental problem is you cannot make important decisions about public policy, public debate, and dealing with other people in a society based on only emotion. And if you take away logic and critical thinking, that's all you got left. And you can tell that most of these things are emotional decision-making that's coming out. You can tell it's based on emotions because there is no logic in any of these things. None of them. None. It's all emotional. And the West has had the luxury to be able to do that for decades because we've had it too good, we've had it too easy, and people don't need to really, you know, think their way out of a paper bag anymore. You know what I mean? don't need to really use logic and critical thinking, because basically the West is set up now that all you have to do is get up, go to work, keep your head down, do your job, shut your mouth, go home, spend time with your kids, spend time with your family, have fun when you can, and then rinse and repeat the next day. And that is, for most people, the path of least resistance. That's what humans generally do. If you have an easy way to get through life, that's what you're going to do, mostly. And so the luxury of being able to make only emotional decisions and throwing away logic and critical thinking has been afforded to Western citizens for decades, and this is where it's gotten us people. And now we're starting to get mugged by reality. And reality always wins, because those are the parameters in which we live. We might live in the West, but we still live in reality. And eventually reality comes knocking, and then you have to deal with reality. And you can't deal with reality with only emotions. It doesn't work. You know what I mean? Just because you don't like something, just because you want to cry about something, just because something hurts your feelings or something makes you happy, doesn't mean that it's either gonna go away or be there. You know, things don't manifest themselves. We have to do something to attain things. And when you're dealing with reality suddenly your comfortable Western decadent bubble is burst by reality, you're going to have to know how to react. And the problem is, people don't know how to react anymore, because they base all their decision making on emotions and how they feel, and not on logic and critical thinking. So we have fucked ourselves with this. Now, I agree, a lot of people couldn't have seen this coming. You know what I mean? Most people wouldn't have seen this coming. It's kind of surprising us, but it should be a lesson for the future. And I think what we've got now is we've got three different groups of people in Western society when it comes to logic. Let's take a look. All right, so we've got what I call the realists. And I know that the actual definition of a realist is not someone who thinks logically and critically, but I would say that all realists do think logically and critically. Right now, those of us that use logic and critical thinking are definitely a minority in the West. Not only are we a minority, we are a persecuted minority. Strange situation to be in, because most other minorities are protected by politics and law and all kinds of other stuff, yet we are getting absolutely clobbered. I'm not trying to sound like a victim here. That's not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is, our voices are getting drowned out when we bring logic and realism and reality to the table in a discussion. You see it on Twitter and on social media. People are having purely emotional discussions. The vitriol, the hatred, and everybody's a Nazi and we want you to die, and you know what I mean? It's crazy. And all of these discussions and arguments that people are having are made possible by the internet, but it's too much for people to handle emotionally. And that's the thing. They have put aside logic and critical thinking. They're reverting to purely emotions, and people are having overly emotional arguments with each other online, and you can see that there is no logic or critical thinking involved. And surprisingly enough, when someone like me or someone else tries to interject logic and critical thinking, tries to come in online or somewhere else and say, look guys, calm down, look at it like this, let's take a look at it like this, they get hammered. They're automatically called Nazis and racist and Hitler and you're bad people and we hope you die, and if you didn't take the COVID vaccine, then you shouldn't be allowed to get medical treatment, and fuck you. And that's it. That's what it's about. It's like a bunch of fucking overgrown babies bitching at each other. You know what I'm saying? Trying to set the rules of the game for which the rules have already been set, people. You know what I'm saying? Humanity needs logic and critical thinking. Period. Again, we live in reality. So, we're in the minority, but we're there. And I don't know, we don't have some sort of magical witchcraft, even though with the persecution that's going on logical and critical thinkers, you would think we were witches. I mean, we are getting hunted like witches, You would think we were witches, but we're not. Again, every human has this ability, but it's like a muscle that you have to exercise. You know what I'm saying? In order for it to remain strong and remain viable, you must exercise your logic and critical thinking muscle, and you do that, and you gain experience in doing so by living life, by navigating your way through life. And as I said before, the West has had the luxury of being able to live in decadence and ignore logic and critical thinking. Those are difficult things, and basically we can get through life without doing so. And that's worked for decades. But that time is now over, because look where we are. You know what I'm saying? We are in absolute madness. We're in absolute fucking crazy clown world. Just look around you. You know what I mean? So we need to bring back logic and critical thinking. And I'm part of that group of logical and critical thinking. There's a lot of other people that are part of that group. You see them everywhere. You see them also online when they don't get censored off platforms and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I got my TikTok account banned already after like 2 months. I just started TikTok because I have no followers, no social media presence. Just started it, got like 300 followers. Basically talked about true things, talked about politics, talked about, you know, the trans thing and the Joe Biden corruption thing and the whole shit. And after 2 months, they said, nope, permanently banned. Fuck you, you're gone. So, yeah, that's how the other side is able to continue to just use emotion to make decisions, because they don't want the logical and critical thinking to come into their sphere, because that threatens their worldview. Their worldview is based on emotion, and if you bring logic and reality into that, it shatters their worldview. They get very defensive, and so they're very much on board with people like me getting censored. But they don't understand that at some point, reality will also come for them, and there will be no censorship of reality. There will be no ignoring reality. They're going to have to deal with it, and they're not going to know how to do it. And that leads me to our next group of people when it comes to logic in the West. That's right, the emoters people. That's what I like to call them, because that's what they do. They emote all day. That's what they do. They're completely immersed in emotional thinking, and that's all they can do. And look, before I get too hard on y'all, Gen Zers and millennials, it isn't really your fault. Once you become an adult, it becomes your fault. But it isn't really your fault that you grew up this way, because that's your parents' fault. That's the adult's fault. That's the teacher's fault. That they never took the time to teach you logic and critical thinking as a skill to make it through life, so you can't do it. And that's a real problem. We really need to get back to that, where logic and critical thinking are taught. But I think that the problem is that, you know, after my generation, I was about 17, maybe 18 when the internet first came out. So I grew up without it. When I was a kid, we were outside playing every day after school, all weekend long. We were at the pool. We were at the basketball court. We played tackle football without pads, for fun together. We rode bikes without helmets. You know, we climbed trees. We climbed on the top of the school roof. We toilet papered people's houses. We ding-dong ditched people. You know, we did all kinds of shit. And we had to assess risk all the time by ourselves. You know, because our parents weren't there watching us every minute of the day. We weren't home. And so that's part of how you grow up, learning through experience how to use logic and critical thinking. And the millennials and the Gen Zers have not had that ability. They haven't been given the ability to fail by their parents. It's also the generations. They're also the generations of the participation trophy. You know, when we didn't get any trophies unless we won. You know what I mean? That's it. If you weren't good enough, then you weren't good enough, and you're a loser. No trophy for you. And now we've completely raped the system of merit, and especially in America, where everybody gets a participation trophy, and it doesn't matter how you play, if you win, as long as you just play the game, and everybody's equal and everybody's the same, and it's all bullshit. It's all based not in reality. It's all based in feelings and emotion only. There is no more logic there. And it's becoming a real problem, as you can see. You know, so, again, well, it's not their fault. You know, the adults didn't do their job in getting these kids ready for reality. And it's not their fault if they're younger. But once you're out on your own, people, Gen Z and millennials, let me explain this to you. Once you're out by yourself, on your own, out away from your parents, it is time for you to learn how to navigate the real world. You can't have somebody leading you by the hand through all of life. It doesn't work like that. But in order for you to do it by yourself, you need to be able to think logically and critically. It is mandatory. There's no way around it. You cannot live by emoting your way through life forever. At some point, I'll say it again, at some point, reality will come to get you. And if you don't know how to deal with it, it is going to eat you alive. It's a fact of life. There's no way around it. Get ready for it. And that's why, part of the reason why I'm making these videos is I really believe, I know it sounds totally stupid, but I really believe that there are people out there that need help learning how to look at things logically and critically and stop using emotions to make all decisions. I think people need help, and that's what I want to do with my videos. So I'm going to take a logical look at a whole bunch of different topics. And again, if there's a topic out there that you guys want me to talk about and put through a logical lens, write me, let me know what you want. I'll talk about any topic. I'll talk about any subject, and I will put it in a logical lens for you, you know? And if you've got ideas that beat my ideas, if you think my ideas are wrong, I'm also welcoming you to write me and comment to me about it. Please do. I'd like to learn as well. Really, I'm not joking. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not joking around. I mean it. I think that that's how we get somewhere in society, is by people discussing their ideas with each other and not just emotionally shutting each other down because they don't want to hear something that doesn't click with their own narrative. That's not a good way to do society, and a democracy will never work under those circumstances. If you want to run a democracy based on only everybody's emotions, it's going to fall apart. It's going to be gone. Now, my opinion on democracy is, I'm not going to go through it all here, because what we are living in the West, those are not real democracies. They're a semblance of democracy. They're kind of like a kind of democracy, but not really democracy, really. But we'll get into that in another video. So there you go. There's group 2, which are the Gen Zers and the millennials, that just don't have the skills to think logically and critically because they, first of all, didn't grow up with it. Second of all, they didn't ever have to learn it or practice it. Again, ask Google for YouTube for everything, and you'll be able to learn how to do anything in one video or two. And all you have to do then is follow instructions. You don't have to think. You don't have to use logic or critical thinking. You only have to follow instructions. So that's why, with the people that were surprised how many young people just fell over and adhered to the rules, the insane COVID mandates, it's because these people they've only lived following instructions. They've never been prompted to really think for themselves or think logically or critically. At school, they're taught what to think, not how to think.
In 500 meters.
And that is a problem. So we've got to help these people if we can. But I think we have to pay less attention to them than we do to this third group. And they're the worst ones. They're the ones to really watch out for. So yeah, we got the cowards, the third group, by far the most dangerous group, and also the largest group in the world of logic and critical thinking. And then the thing is, at least Gen Z and millennials have a real excuse. They can point to their parents, their teachers, the adults that they grew up with, and say, look, these people told me basically that being an emotional adolescent brat my whole life was okay. I didn't need logic and critical thinking for decision making or to get what I want or to get what I need, because emotions worked for me, and they can point to them and say that's their fault. The people that know how to think logically and critically but just choose not to do so because it benefits them personally while the rest of society goes to hell in a handbasket, those people have no excuse. They have excuses. They've got reasons. And we may or may not get into those reasons or excuses here today, but they're the most dangerous group. They're the people during Nazi times that ratted on their neighbors. You know what I'm saying? That before the Nazi regime took over, were good friends with their Jewish neighbors, but when the Nazi regime took over, they suddenly ratted those people out or treated them like diseased pigs because that's what the rest of society was doing. They didn't want to be ostracized or maybe killed or arrested or whatever happened to them. So they decided to do the worst thing in the world that they could do. They turned into rats and basically killed their neighbors and friends that they once loved. Those are the cowards. And I would say that, you know, if you're looking into the Nazi times and where we are today, at least in the Nazi times, the cowards had something really bad to fear. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't give them a real excuse. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really give them an excuse. But, you know, they had their repercussions and their consequences were of, you know, a gravity that we in the West today will not face, at least not yet. And so the cowards today have really no excuse in comparison. I mean, let's be honest. No one's going to a gulag. No one's going to get killed. No one's going to get arrested. But we are on the verge in some Western countries that you might well get arrested. You know? But for now, we're still in these like quasi-democracies. So you really don't have that much to fear if you compare it to history. And so these cowards that are basically helping lead the charge of the decay of Western civilization because they refuse to speak up. They're the worst. They're the biggest part of the problem because the thing is, if the logical and critical thinkers had them on our side and we teamed up, then we would be able to really change things in the right direction. But since those same people that are the cowards are helping the censors keep us quiet and helping the over-emotional continue their path to emotional destruction, they're the evil. They're the evil. They're the evil people. They're the people we have to watch out for the most. They're the people that speak out of two sides of their mouths. They're the people that you can't trust because one day they say A, the next day they say B. They're part of the political class. You know, they're the people that have their hands on the levers of power. They're the people that have stuff to lose. And so it suits them greatly to just watch everybody else go to hell in a handbasket and keep their mouths shut, even though they know in their head and their hearts that what's going on is wrong. What's going on is wrong, and it's leading us into depravity, it's leading us into decay and disaster. And they know it, but they won't do anything about it even though they can. And so those are, in my opinion, the most evil of all of them, the people that are to be despised the most, let's put it that way. And, you know, what do you do with these people? You know what I mean? What do you do? You know, the thing is, they don't realize that the pendulum will swing one day. You see what I'm saying? They think right now that keeping their heads down, keeping their mouths shut, right now it's benefiting them temporarily. What they don't realize is that when the net finally closes, you know, that they're going to be in that fucking trap as well. It's not just us. It's going to be them too. They're basically right now just useful idiots for those people that are truly have great power. And so they're basically the useful idiots because they deliver no resistance. And so those who deliver no resistance won't have anything to fear right now. But boy, when this totalitarian net closes around society in the West, those people are going to be in that net, and they're going to be part of the serfs, part of the plebs, and they're not going to be any more special than any of us. And it's the same kind of thing that happened in the Nazi regime. You know what I mean? The people just refuse to look at history and take lessons from certain things. They just don't do it. You know, they don't do it. Again, these people aren't making only emotional decisions. They are basically capable of making logical decisions, capable of critically thinking. They know exactly what's right, what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, yet they choose to say and do nothing about it. And that's a real problem. That's a real problem. So, yeah. Those are the three groups, people. Those are the three groups of people that we have dealing with this issue at the moment. And I'm saying, again, I'll say it again, without the comeback of logic and critical thinking in society, society will decay. It will go into complete chaos. And the only way out of that is a tyrannical, dictatorial government that keeps everybody in line. You know, it'll be like parents dealing with emotional adolescents. They got to keep them out of each other's hair. They got to keep them from killing each other. And the only way to do that is to be a dictator or a totalitarian leader. If you have to do that on a countrywide scale or a society-wide scale. So that is what is coming. If we continue down this path of over-emotional chaos, the only solution for the politicians and the ruling elite is going to be, we've got to keep these people from fucking bashing each other's heads in. And since they are incapable of thinking logically and critically and over-emotionalize everything, we'll have to keep them in line with a heavy hand. The same as parents would do with ruly, out-of-control teenagers, that are constantly at each other's throats. They would do the same thing. And that's what's going to happen with society. That's what's going to happen on a larger, grander scale. And it's already happening. If you open your eyes and take a look, it's already happening right now. It's already going in that direction. Look at COVID. Look at the thing with Ukraine. It's already but look at all the censorship in the West. It's already getting pushed in that direction. It's getting pushed in a totalitarian control direction. And if we want that to stop, we have a small window of time left to make it stop. And that's going to be where we're going to go next, is what do we do about this? How is implementing logic and critical thinking going to make any difference anymore now and put us back on the right track and keep our freedoms, and allow us to keep our freedoms, allow us to have bodily autonomy, allow us to have our own opinions, allow us to be able to say what we want and to say what we think, and keep us free. That's next. So look, I don't think it's any secret that it's my position that we have to bring back logic in Western societies on a massive scale and as fast as possible, so as to not remain in this position, in this situation, and also not to get back in this kind of situation in the future. The problem is, that's going to take a long time. Again, we've lived so long on emotions only that switching back to logic and reason is going to take time. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take effort on everybody's part. And I'll get into what everybody can do on an individual basis in a minute. But first, I want to talk about our existential problem. And I'm going to call it the totalitarian push towards collectivism. And everything from globalization to socialism to communism to, this wokeism shit that's going on. All of this shit is encapsulated in this totalitarian push for collectivism. Now, I think, like I said, everybody can feel it no matter what side of the aisle you're on. You feel that the governments all over the Western world are kind of closing in on everybody's personal lives. There's more and more rules, there's more and more regulations, there's more and more, more and more graver punishments, more and more control. And it's creeping ever so slowly, and it has been for decades. But in COVID, we saw like a massive push towards totalitarianism. COVID showed the elites that are pulling the strings, showed them that, okay, we've got society in a position, we got them over a barrel. They'll do anything if they're scared enough. That's what they've learned. And so now that they know that, they're of course going to use panic and fear with everything, as we see them do now. Now that COVID is pretty much over, we see them doing that with climate change, with the war in Ukraine. It's all fear and panic, and they are of the impression, and rightly so, that if the Western people are in fear and panic enough, they will give up every right, they will give up all their freedoms, they will give up all their privacy in exchange for not even real security, but a semblance of security that the government seems to give them. And let's put aside for a second why the governments are doing this. I mean, of course, everybody can think of 1,000 reasons. There's obvious reasons on the table, but let's skip that for now. The fact is, it's happening. We all feel it, no matter if we live in America, I live in Germany, Europe, anywhere in Europe, all the Western countries are pushing more and more towards more control in the form of central bank digital currencies. Once that's implemented, we've got a serious issue. The WEF is pushing for these absolutely socialist, globalist agendas, and it's all about more and more control and more restrictions on the public in the name of climate change or health or whatever. Right now, the World Health Organization, is pushing for the pandemic treaty, which basically signs over the sovereignty of every nation that signs the treaty to the WHO, which is an unelected bureaucracy, which is part of the United Nations. Nobody elected these people. Part of the heads of the WHO are, CCP members of China. They are all about control. They're all about power. And basically 194 countries are getting ready to sign over their sovereignty to this bureaucratic organization that is not democratically elected and doesn't have our best interests at heart, but try to convince the masses of that. But this is all happening now. So we don't have time to spend years or decades on re-implementing logic in the Western world. At the moment, the first thing we have to do, yes, start working on logic. Start teaching logic. Start using it in your everyday lives. Go cold turkey from emotions when it comes to public policy, public decisions, and things that you need to deal with society. When you're dealing with other people in society that aren't necessarily of your same opinion, you need to be able to use logic and implement it in order to come to some sort of agreement. There's no other way. There's no other way. And that's what we need to start doing. But we also need to pull the emergency brake here. Right now, the most important thing to do so that we can at least retain our freedoms and we don't end up in any totalitarian situation that will be much worse than the times of COVID. Once the net is cast, once the net is closed, we're in for a real issue. And we have to avoid that at all costs. And so therefore, as much as I want to start with re-implementing logic and critical thinking into society, which I think we need to do, I also think that the emergency brake is we must stop voting for left-wing parties. And I know that sounds short and, unthought out, that I'm trying to demonize, well, it's everything on the left and the right is great. No, I'm not saying that. But left-wing politics, left-wing ideology is what got us in this position. You know what I mean? It's what's got us in this position. They have used politics to play on people's emotions. They have seen, whether intentional or unintentional, they have seen that playing on people's emotions is the way to get the vote. And policies and outcomes don't seem to matter, and they don't matter to people who only use emotions to make decisions. Only the emotional gratification matters then. And logic and critical thinking, as I said, is not part of that for these group of people. And so for decades, the West has been in the position where they could also vote based on emotion instead of logic and critical thinking, which is what a society should do when choosing its leaders. No, they've chosen the leaders and still are doing so based on emotion and how they feel about somebody, whether they like somebody. Oh, Donald Trump's a big asshole that sends mean tweets and called Rosie O'Donnell a fat pig, who is, by the way, a fat fucking pig. What can you say? You know what I mean? No, we can't have him as president, even though he's been the best president that I've ever seen in my lifetime. We can't have him because he's a dickhead. We can't have him because he sends mean tweets and he said something bad to Rosie fat fucking O'Donnell. And so we're going to vote in somebody who makes us feel good, somebody like old Grandpa Joe. Look where it's gotten us. Look where this has gotten us. Old Grandpa Joe is a creepy fucking pedo that also happens to be the most corrupt president the United States has ever seen. The evidence is there. The evidence is clear. It's out there. And nobody can deny it. It's there. Look for it. Don't watch CNN. Don't watch MSNBC. They're not going to tell you about it. Look for it. Do your own fucking research. The internet's a big place. You can use it for something else except for watching people like me bitch on the internet or looking at cat videos. You can also use it to research and gain knowledge, which is what you should do if you're a logic and critical thinker. But the people aren't logic and critical thinkers. As a matter of fact, to me, it's amazing that Joe Biden, at this point, even has a chance of winning another election. But he does. He does. He has a real chance of running again and winning again. It is amazing. It's amazing. But put that aside. We need to get the left-wing ideologues out of power, away from the levers of power as far as they can. Start voting for populist or slightly right-of-center parties. I'm not talking about going to create a Nazi party and vote for right-wing extremists. No. Right of center. Away from left-wing politics. No matter how you've got to do it, whatever country you're in, away from left-wing politics. And look, you're going to have to start involving yourself. I know that a lot of people don't like politics. They're like, oh my God, who cares? It's so boring. But the thing is, you have to care. Because if we don't get these people away from the levers of power, we are fucked. We're fucked. If we end up like the people in North Korea, if they want to regain their freedom somehow, there's going to be only one way they're going to be able to do it. They're going to have to massively rise up and get violent. They're going to have to fight physically to get themselves out of the situation they're in. Some people will die in the process, maybe a lot. You know what I mean? Because a country like North Korea will just unleash its military on its own population. There won't be arrests. They'll just start popping everybody. So they're already screwed. And if we allow ourselves to get to that point in the West, we will not be able to get out of it unless we're ready to hit the streets with guns, knives, and pitchforks and use actual violence to overthrow whatever government that's oppressing us. And I don't think that people in the West are of the ilk that are ready to do this. So we have a chance to not put ourselves in that position. And in order to do that right now, yes, start exercising your logic muscle for sure. But vote out leftists. Vote out ideologues. No ideology. Ideology has been bad, no matter which one it is. It's always had bad tendencies. Ideologues and ideology are not supposed to run societies that are based on freedom and democracy. It does not work. We tried giving religion power, look what it did. Now we're trying to give wokesters power, look what it's doing. We're giving left-wing ideologues power, looks what it's done. You see what it's done. You see it. Open your fucking eyes, people. Stop attaching your emotions to these politics. It is an existential threat. We don't want to get into a totalitarian system. And if we want to avoid it, the way to start doing it is first, at the next time you can vote, get the leftists out of power. That's the most important thing right now. Get the leftist out of power. And in the meantime, start using logic and critical thinking in your own life, especially in public life, especially in public policy, especially around your kids or other people's kids. Logic is the key, people. You know, logic is the key. So that's what we got to do. That's what we've got to do. First, get leftists out of power, however you can. Vote whoever you can in. And then we start using logic and critical thinking again in the West to navigate us through our situations, our decisions, and our problems, and also how to deal with each other. And then we'll be fine. You know? Share my videos. That's one thing you can do. So now we'll get into what do we do exactly in order to start implementing logic and critical thinking back into Western societies. So, how do we reintroduce logic and critical thinking on a massive scale in Western societies that are now in a basic free fall into craziness? And, you know, I'll be honest, I'm going to be real here. This might be kind of a black pill, but it is a long-term solution, you know, getting logic and critical thinking back in there, because the fact is, it's just not going to happen overnight. That's why I said it's very important at the moment to, while you're introducing logic and critical thinking back into your own lives and hopefully passing it on to other people around you, it is very important right now in most Western countries to vote the left out of power. They are going to get us into a situation where voting and thinking aren't going to be enough to save our freedoms and save our rights. And they're going to get us into a position where violence is going to be the only way. And I think that most people are not ready for that, don't want anything to do with it. And left-wing crazy ideology has been in power way too long. So please, people, no matter where you are, You know, you don't have to vote for Trump in America, but then vote for another Republican or right-winger. You know what I'm saying? Just get rid of the left. That's the that's the first step. But then to go back to logic, you know, like I said, it's a long-term game. It's a long-term game. And the reason why it's so important is it's, like I said before, it's the foundation of your own life and it's the foundation of societal life. You know, without it, society is going to collapse, and without it, your own life is going to collapse. You can only coast on emotional decision-making and emotional, you know, living on emotions only for so long. Eventually, like I said, in order to deal with reality, you will have to be able to use logic and critical thinking. You know, I like to use this analogy for this. Like, think of life as a puzzle made of glass, and you don't know what the end result of the puzzle is going to be beforehand. So you're putting together a puzzle, and it's made of glass, and you don't know what the picture is going to look like once you finish the puzzle. So that makes it pretty difficult. The only way to solve the puzzle, the only way to put this puzzle together is going to be to use logic and critical thinking to get it done. So what would you do if you go at the puzzle logically? The first thing is you look for the edges, because you got the flat side. The flat side means there's nothing beyond there, and you work from outside in. And with life, it's the same thing. You don't know what the results are going to be in your life. You don't know what the future holds. You can guess, but you're not going to be right most of the time. You know, you can't make predictions. You don't see the future. And people are, you know, they very much, you know, people generally favor security. You know what I'm saying? They want securities, guarantees. They want insurances. And life just isn't like that, no matter how much we try to make it so. So the way that we normally, as human beings, get as close to the truth as possible and as close to the right decision as possible for whatever it is we're trying to get accomplished is by using logic and critical thinking. Emotion will never work for that. It will never work unless, you know, you guess right. It's basically, you know, you're throwing it up like a quarter in the air and hoping that it lands on the chosen side. But that is not really actively working to get to the destination you want to get to. For this, you will need logic and critical thinking. And, you know, to go back to the puzzle, what's happening right now in the West is everybody is trying to put this puzzle together. You know, everybody has to work together to put the puzzle together. And everybody is bored of it, tired of it, don't care, don't want to know. They can't think through it. And instead of using logic and critical thinking to solve the puzzle, what they're doing is they're emotionally trying to slam these puzzle pieces together. Doesn't matter if it fits or not, doesn't matter what the end result's going to be. And in the meantime, what they're doing is they're breaking all these puzzle pieces, shattering all these glass pieces. And now you've got an even bigger problem, because you have to glue all these little pieces back together in the exact right form so that they fit in the rest of the puzzle pieces. It's that simple, people. I mean, it sounds dumb, but look, that is the way it is. That is life. Life and navigating the world is like putting together a glass puzzle. And you can't force the pieces together. No matter how pissed off you get, no matter how frustrated you get, no matter how angry you get or emotional you get, it won't get solved if you cram pieces that don't fit together. And you can't opt out. You know what I'm saying? Because opting out is killing yourself. You know? You can't opt out of the glass puzzle or you're gone. So, hey, look at it like that. That's why it's so important. So, if you look at it like that, and you agree with what I'm telling you here, then the number one thing to do right now is to start using logic and critical thinking in your own life, and also basically demanding it of the people around you. You know? It's going to be hard here, because there are a lot of people that just don't want to live in reality until reality comes knocking. So there are going to be certain people that you are just never going to be able to convince. You're never going to be able to turn. They are going to live in their version of reality for as long as they possibly can, no matter what you say, no matter what happens to anybody else in the same kind of circumstances. And there's no way to really get to them. So if you're dealing with people in your life that refuse truth, refuse facts, refuse to see reality, and it's an important enough issue to you that they do see reality in this situation, then the sad truth for you is you are going to have to X this person from your life. Now, that's not super weird, because a lot of people on the left have been doing that ever since Donald Trump, all throughout COVID, now at the Ukraine. Basically, the left excommunicates everybody that just doesn't agree with them, whether they're right or wrong, whether they're telling the truth or that they're lying. It all doesn't matter for the left. You either agree with them and you're on their standpoint, and if you don't, you're fucking out. That's how they do it. And it's time for us, those logical and critical thinkers here, which probably are mostly on the right, it's time for us to play this same game. You can't waste your time. Sorry, you can't waste your time or your energy on people that just don't want to do it. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. So the best way to be able to go forward is you've got to get rid of these people out of your life. I'm not saying get rid of them like get rid of them. I'm saying X them out of your life. Done. I've got no more patience for people in my life. If anybody in my life runs around talking about, oh, there's more than two sexes, and a man can be a woman, and a man can menstruate, for example, I would be done with those people. They wouldn't be allowed in my house. They wouldn't be allowed around my kids. They wouldn't. I would not communicate with them anymore, because I would say, look, you are clearly denying reality. You are clearly denying the facts, and you are doing it in a nefarious fashion. You're doing it for nefarious reasons. You're doing it because you want to be part of the crowd that you want to be a part of. Damn the truth, damn reality. And therefore, these are the people that are damning us into what will turn into a totalitarian society. I guarantee it, if we keep going down this road. So that's the start, people. You start with yourself. Get rid of the people that are poisoning that. You know what I'm saying? Because you can't use logic and critical thinking when dealing with somebody who refuses to do that. That's also, as much as it might split us, that's also the thing that's going to unite everybody. You know, you can look at logic as your guiding light, your compass through life. That's what logic is. And if we all unite around it, we all agree, look, when we're dealing with each other, it's got to be on a basis of logic. When we're dealing with policies, for example, that the government's going to make for everybody in society, we've got to go at it through logic. And if we all agree on that, then we agree on something fundamental. You know, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of right-wing podcasters out there, and I love them. I watch a lot of them, you know, and they've got good things going. But a lot of them are running around all of a sudden trying to push religion, you know, push religion, because they feel like the reason for wokeism, the reason for all this downfall of the West is because we've lost religion. And, you know, that while that's true that religion is becoming less and less popular, there are more and more atheists coming up. And, you know, I guess people really can't be atheists. They can be agnostic, you know, because they can say, like me, I can say, well, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? The whole religious and God story to me seems absolutely bonkers, you know what I'm saying? But I do not know if there is an outside entity of some sort that is higher than us on this earth. I don't know that, so I'm agnostic. But look, religion, you're never going to get everybody to unite around religion because many people are just not going to buy it. They're not going to go for it. They're not going to go for the religious aspect. And so therefore you're again excluding a large portion of society here by saying, well, all we need is religion and then everything will be hunky-dory once again. That's not true. Plus, I personally don't want religion having power over my life. So when it comes again to public policy and avoiding totalitarianism, to put religion in power is not the answer. It is a very bad move. We've given religion power before, and what did we get? The Crusades and all kinds of other insanity. You know what I'm saying? They are not, religion should not play a part in public policy that everybody has to adhere to and rules that are made for everybody. It should not be the case. And so that's where I don't agree with these right-wingers that are talking about, well, we just need to get back to religion. I think that the missing logic is the key to all of this. I think that the absence of logic is what is causing the whole downfall of the West. It is not an absence of religion. It's an absence of logic. And just like people can unite in religion if they believe the same thing, people can unite around logic. And we all can. Because everybody has the ability to use logic and critical thinking. And if they just apply it, then we will all agree on many more things now that we used to not agree on. 100%, I guarantee it. But again, you cannot play logic with somebody who refuses to play logic. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. And the fact is, they are going to have to learn through hardship that comes along in their life, and it will at some point. They will have to learn that their way of going about things emotionally and ignoring reality is not working. They're going to have to learn that through hardship and, downfalls in their own lives. You will not be able to convince them. They are not going to be convinced. You know what I mean? They just won't. They just won't, because right now it's working for them, apparently. Something is going to have to happen in their lives to them that is going to knock them in the face and make them go, wow, logic is the key. Emotional thinking is not getting me anywhere. And it's ruining my life. And it's ruining a lot of other people's lives if you're a person that's making decisions for everybody. So those people are going to have to be woken up on their own terms. That's the way it works for everybody. That's the way it worked for me. It's the way it worked for you. You're not going to be able to convince a certain number of people. But you can work logic in your own lives, and you can demand it of those around you, and you can hand down the value of logic to, for example, your kids. If you're a teacher, you can teach it to your students. No matter what they're teaching in your school, you can, as a teacher, implement logic and critical thinking in your own lessons, in your own classes. You can. There's ways to do it. And we're going to go through ways to do it in some of my videos for sure. For sure. Because that's my goal here. My goal is to try to help bring logic and critical thinking back to the West. I think it's crazy that some trucker dude who lives in Germany has to do this, because I feel kind of stupid, because it's actually something that everybody really should know. You know what I mean? But it's clear not everybody, and a large majority of the people in the West right now, are ignoring those traits in themselves, and they are relying purely on emotions to drive them through life. And it's starting to backfire. So I think it's important. So that's why I'm going to make videos about certain subjects, certain topics, and I'm going to pick them apart and look at them through a logical lens, and that thereby teaching other people how to do it, or at least showing them the right direction. Now, there's going to be, if you try to preach this, for example, to somebody else, there is going to be one answer that a lot of people are going to give you, that a lot of people have given me, which is, of course, a cop-out. It's totally stupid. People are going to say, well, my logic will be different than your logic. And in a sense, they're right, because it depends. If your goals are different, then the logic to get to those goals is going to be slightly different. But if your goals are the same, the logic is going to be approximately the same. I guarantee it. Just try it. You know what I mean? Just try it. There'll be more videos of mine where you will see this in action, where I will look at two different perspectives of a certain situation and show you that in the end, the logic just ties in together. That's how people can unite. That's how people can get together. That's how people can make critical decisions, good decisions for humanity and for society. And we've got to go cold turkey on the emotions for a bit. Yes, people are emotional beings. Human beings are emotional. I get it. I'm not saying you have to ignore your emotions at all costs. What I'm saying is you have to put it down a peg. You have to knock it down a peg. And like addicts, if you don't go cold turkey for a little while, it's just not going to kick in. So try from now on to look at everything you do through a logical lens. Think it through, even the simplest things. You know what I'm saying? Even the simplest things, like, what do I want for dinner today? You know what I'm saying? Try to pick it apart in your head and look at it logically, depending on what outcome you want. You know what I'm saying? Look at it logically, and then go from there. Try it. Practice it. That's what we have to do, people. We have to practice it, get back into practice on this, and then we start implementing it on a larger scale. Again, very important. Start it today. Start it with the people around you today. Practice it. That's what we need to do. We need to do that, because we need to try to save Western society. Because, I live here. A lot of you live here. You know what I mean? And I know that I'm not the only one that hates the direction this all is going. And I think that the only real solution is to get logic and critical thinking back into Western society. It's just, I can't say it enough, people. I'm going to say it over and over again. So, yeah, that's pretty much it, man. So if you're like me, you're a little bit black-pilled on the voting system and the election system in America, and also in certain other countries in the West. The voting system seems to be, off kilter a little bit. Let's say that, just to be, keep it nice. But obviously, there have been some major issues with the last few elections, especially those in America. We all know it. Let's not deny it. And those of us who know it also are a little bit disenfranchised and also probably think, what's the point of fucking voting in a system that's corrupted? Well, that's what my next video is going to be about. I'm going to take you through voting and why it's still important and what the logical case is to continue to do it, even though we might be a little bit skeptical, I guess, about the election system. Voting is still going to be important, and we're going to take a look at the logical reason why. Join me on that video. That'll be the next one.